Welcome to Middlesex Moments from the Center for New Media at Middlesex Community College in Middletown. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO, and I'm here together with students in the college's studio television production course. You can't see them. They're behind the scenes running all of the equipment that makes Middlesex Moments happen. Don't worry, they're wearing masks and they're practicing social distancing while we record this show. First up is our news segment called In the Loop. Time for a few short stories highlighting some of the many great things that are happening here at your community college. Middlesex Community College has been awarded the 2021-22 Silver Level Military Friendly School designation. The Military Friendly Schools list is created each year based on extensive research using public data sources from more than 8,800 schools nationwide, input from student veterans, and responses to a proprietary survey given at participating institutions such as Middlesex. It really personally means a lot to me to help all of our students who are serving or have served in the military, said Peter Galgano, Middlesex Veterans Outreach Coordinator and himself a U.S. Marine Corps veteran. Peter continued, "Even though we are generations apart, there is a brotherhood and a sisterhood between all of us. This is a bond that will last forever." Congratulations. Middlesex Community College recently received $12,500 in grant funding from the Gene Haas Foundation to help students build skills in the machining industry. The foundation provides an opportunity for schools to apply for funds annually, provide scholarships for computer numerical control or CNC machine technology students, and National Institute for Metalworking Skills credentials. The Gene Haas Foundation has contributed over $60 million since 2014 to support education throughout the world. Achieving the Dream is a national network of community colleges, including Middlesex, that focuses on improving student success and equity. ATD announced that Middlesex Community College student Ethan Rossier was chosen as one of only 8 National 2021 Dream Scholars. Ethan is an economics major and honors student from New London. Achieving the Dream's Dream Scholarship Program is an experiential learning opportunity for student leaders looking to make a difference on their campus and in their communities. Ethan serves as Vice President of the Middlesex Student Senate and represents the college as a student ambassador. He's a member of the MxCC Council on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, a legislative intern for State Representative Christopher Rosario, and he served on the college's fall planning team that helped us craft a plan for reopening the college safely during the COVID pandemic. And finally, Middlesex Community College is one of 5 colleges in the state that has been awarded a total of $3.4 million from the United States Department of Labor to expand our ability to deliver accelerated training in high-demand healthcare career pathways. The project, known as Connecticut State Healthcare Industry Pathways, or CT-SHIP, will focus on workers displaced by COVID-19, many of whom lost their jobs permanently, and will provide them with skills for good-paying jobs that serve as on-ramps to a future in healthcare. Examples of the kinds of training available to Middlesex students are non-credit certificates in medical billing and coding, and certified nursing assistant and patient care technician, degree programs in health information management, and digital badges from Amazon Web Services training modules. So now, you're in the loop with what's happening here at your community college. Coming up after the break, more of Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College.
I really had no idea of what I wanted to do, so I worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. And finally, I was just like, I just need to go back to school because I wanted to get a business degree. And Middlesex Community College was super convenient. I got a lot out of Middlesex. I never thought I would have reached this far with my associate's degree. It allowed me to buy a house. I was able to get married. It was a dream.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO. Climate change and environmental sustainability have been part of our national conversation for many years. But let's be clear, we're facing a climate crisis on a global scale. The United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change states, "Climate change is the defining issue of our time, and we are at a defining moment. From shifting weather patterns that threaten food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding, the impacts of climate change are global in scope and unprecedented in scale. Without drastic action today, adapting to these impacts in the future will be more costly and difficult." The Sustainability Office at Wesleyan University strives to promote inclusive and equitable environmental sustainability. This includes reducing the university's carbon footprint, integrating sustainability into courses, providing student internships, and fostering spaces on campus for education, discussion, and action on sustainability issues. Middlesex Community College recently renewed its partnership with the Wesleyan Sustainability Office. And joining me now is Jennifer Kleindienst, Director of Sustainability at Wesleyan University. Thanks for being with us today, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
So what first got you interested in this kind of work?
So I've really been interested since I was in high school. I didn't really know what that meant when I was in high school, but started doing various internships and talking to people. And while I was in college, I had the opportunity to work for my college's facilities department, looking into composting at other schools. And there I met with people who have jobs like mine now, and it was a true light bulb moment of this is what I want to do. So ended up completing college and going on to grad school, and the timing of the job at Wesleyan just opened up right as I finished my grad program.
Okay. And how long have you been at Wesleyan?
It'll be 9 years this July, which is astonishing to me.
Yeah, time really does fly when
It
you're having
does.
fun, right?
Yep.
So how important is it for educational institutions like Wesleyan and Middlesex to engage our students with issues that are around climate change and sustainability?
To me, it's critical. Climate change, sustainability in the broader sense, and racial justice are the defining issues of our time, as you noted with the UN statement. In my very first year at Wesleyan, there was a student who said to me, "You know, Jen, it really doesn't matter if we become carbon neutral or not." And I looked at him, "What are you talking about?" He said, "What it really matters is what are students taking with them when they leave here." Wesleyan is a pretty small school, as is Middlesex. The chance for having an impact is really in what our students can take when they graduate and what they can bring out into the world. And that idea has really stuck with me for the entire time that I've been at Wesleyan, and really helped shape the work that I try to do and the work that I try to help others to do, because we have an opportunity to make an outsized impact on the world through what students take when they leave.
Sure. And Wesleyan really is in the vanguard of this. I mean, it's a really visionary approach to sustainability. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but we can't be the only colleges and universities that are thinking of this. So are there some networks that bring together institutions like ours to talk about sustainability issues and how to fold that into our curriculum and work with the students?
Yeah, there are many, from very large to very small. One is Second Nature, which leads institutional climate commitments, carbon commitments, and resilience commitments. So we signed on in 2007, before my time at Wesleyan, committing to carbon neutrality by 2050. They've since introduced the opportunity for resilience commitments, which is looking at not just what is a campus doing to address its carbon footprint, but how are we addressing the effects of climate change that are coming, and how are we working with our community? So they're really visionary in helping to shape that sort of realm. Another that is really important to me, we've been members of ASHE, which is the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. You see why they go by ASHE. Since I started in 2012, and they offer networks to connect people. They have a weekly newsletter, they have conferences, and to me, one of their most important programs is something called STARS, which is a sustainability evaluation. I did that in my very first year at Wesleyan, and that really helped give an objective look at what are we doing, what could we be doing, and has really shaped my work since then. There are also a lot of informal networks, listservs, informal groups that gather focusing on more specific issues, and all together they really help to keep it a connected network, because a lot of schools, most schools in fact, have very small sustainability offices, or only an office of one like my own. And so it's very helpful to be able to connect with people so that no one has to reinvent the wheel. We can all learn from each other, because that's really what we want. We want to address these problems as quickly as possible and as well as we can.
Sure. And even though you're a small office, just looking at the kind of services and programs you offer, you are very well interconnected and intermeshed with everything happening at the university. So what are some of the initiatives that come out of your office?
Sure. So I mentioned that I'm an office of one, and that's an office of one in terms of a full-time employee, but there are about 25 students who work in my office in any given semester. Some of them address waste issues, some of them address environmental justice issues, some work with the Middletown community, and so a lot of the work of the Sustainability Office comes through the work of those students. My office, in terms of what I do directly, comes in a lot of forms, and I know you're going to ask in a little bit about our sustainability plan. Over the past several years, I've started to think of the work that I do in three broad areas: carbon, curriculum, and community. And those three C's really encapsulate nearly all of the work that my office does and the work that Wesleyan itself does. So I work with facilities, for example, to address how exactly are we achieving this carbon neutrality goal. My office co-runs a program to integrate sustainability and environmental justice into courses. And then there's a program in my office to connect students with dorms and other students to encourage sustainable behaviors, whether that be a very personal level behavior or trying to get people to write their legislators more frequently on issues that are important to them. And I could probably talk to you for about an hour and still not list all of the things. Sometimes I wonder, how are we keeping all of these things going? But it's definitely an interesting job, because I'm never bored. There's always new things to work on and great people to work with.
Sure. And if you think about climate change, I mean, we're talking about it today in terms of how the climate of our planet is changing and the downstream effects that has on human civilization and all of the creatures who co-inhabit the earth. But we're talking about, to really address climate change, it is a climate change in how we behave and a culture change. And I imagine that you've seen some incremental, if not big, changes in how things are happening in your own life, but the life of Wesleyan, and how students and faculty approach this work. So what are some of the things that have been incorporated in Wesleyan's sustainability plan that have made a difference?
Sure. So again, it's working in that same three-section framework: carbon, curriculum, and community. The carbon section is probably the most weighty because it addresses our carbon footprint. We have developed a plan for totally electrifying the campus for electricity, heating, and cooling, and how to power it with renewable energy. We're trying to figure out how do we make that economically feasible in the timeline that works for what the world needs. Also looking at air travel and ground travel, commuting, et cetera, as well as environmental impact in a broader sense. In terms of curriculum, we're trying to figure out ways, how do we bring sustainability and environmental justice into more courses? Through the program that I mentioned earlier, it's a voluntary program. There's a small seed grant, essentially, for faculty, but that's probably not feasible on a campus-wide scale. So what kinds of opportunities can we be looking for? And then lastly, in the community section, my office last summer shifted where now I'm part of the Albritton Center for the Study of Public Life, which addresses civic engagement. And that's really given me the opportunity to think more about how my official work at Wesleyan connects with the Middletown community. What can we be doing, like the partnership that you're mentioning, restarting working together with Wesleyan and Middlesex, the city of Middletown, nonprofits, et cetera. What can we be doing? Because there's a lot of untapped potential there, a lot of seeds of things beginning, but I know that it can go much farther, and that's something that I'm really excited about.
And we're talking about community bringing us all together. I think it also speaks to the changes that we have to make in policy in our relationship with government to help us make these changes.
Yes.
Yeah. So what are you or was Wesleyan involved in some of those discussions at a governmental level or in a policy level?
Fairly minimally. There have been a few policy areas where Wesleyan does intersect with state and national policy. For example, we signed on a couple of years ago to what was then the We Are Still In commitment and is now America is Still In, basically saying we are going to hold ourselves accountable to the targets established in the Paris Climate Accords. It was something consistent with what we were already doing, but we really wanted to make sure that we were making an official statement. We've also spoken out in favor of carbon pricing at the national level. And as the right opportunities come along, there's more opportunity for policy work.
Right. Yeah, and I think, again, this has been part of our national and global conversation for many years, and it's good to see the United States returning to the Paris Climate Accord, finally. So I think it's time actually for a short break. And when we come back, more with Jennifer Kleindienst, Director of Wesleyan University's Sustainability Office. And you're watching Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College.
I chose Middlesex because they had a lot of different programs that I was interested in. For me, it was just easier to come here part-time and also keep my job. Middlesex, I would say, helped me get my foot in the door in the news business. The Center for New Media has all the stuff that I see daily at News 8 to be able to jump on and say, I have experience with a control room, I have experience with a TV studio. It's definitely a good choice.
I was homeschooled, and after doing a lot of research, I found MxCC, and it looked like a really good fit for me because I wanted to transfer to UConn, and they have the Pathways program. Being homeschooled, it was nice to have smaller classes. The professors really helped me understand the material. I really felt that Middlesex was invested in my education. It's one of the greatest experiences I've had.
Welcome back to Middlesex Moments from Middlesex Community College. I'm Steve Minkler, the college CEO. I've been chatting with Jennifer Kleindienst, Director of Wesleyan University's Sustainability Office, and we talked earlier about the moral imperative for colleges and universities to be leaders in conversations about climate change and sustainability. And our students really need to be part of those conversations. So toward that end, on March 10th, Wesleyan is hosting an event known as the Climate Narrative Project. Historian and author Jeff Biggers will lead this virtual event. The Middlesex Moments crew spoke with Jeff Biggers recently about the need for a climate narrative project.
So on March 10th, we'll be introducing a program that hopefully we'll be able to carry out into the fall. And that's a program of how we look at the role of students and faculty and staff there at Middletown, and how we can use the narrative arts, anywhere from spoken word poetry to visual arts to dance to theater and film, to tell a better story to help galvanize students and faculty and staff to be more active on campus and in the community. So specifically on Tuesday, I'll be doing a performance. I'll be showing what we'll be how we're working with other campuses around the country, and how we can begin the process to incorporate some of these climate narrative and climate story projects there at your Wesleyan campus. Well, right now, we have climate change happening every day in our lives. I think one thing we have to really recognize is that this is not something we're looking at in the future that our grandkids or even our children are going to be dealing with. Every 2 seconds, someone is displaced on this planet due to some sort of climate issue. And this is, of course, contributed both to issues of rising sea levels. If you think about it, 70% of our major cities in the world are actually along coastal areas that are going to be impacted by rising sea levels. This is both in the United States, in Europe, and in the continent of Africa and Asia, and across the world. At the same time, we're seeing major degradation from drought in certain areas because of rising temperatures that no longer are sustainable to maintain an agro-pastoral economy, especially in certain countries that have depended on agriculture as the main driver of their economy. And so this is the issue of drought, which we now are seeing a massive displacement. The third area is just what we would really kind of recognize as these kind of major events, extreme weather. where you have the fires, of course, in the West because of drought, because of other circumstances that now are leading to a massive displacement of people, of course, from the Rocky Mountain states and along the West Coast. And this, of course, is fires in the rest of the world, to where we're seeing flooding ourselves now in the United States, not only along the coastal areas, but along riverways and whatnot. I'm here in Iowa, and we've had 3 historic floods just in the past 18 months, which have really displaced a lot of the agricultural economy and towns that live along the rivers. And finally, you know, last summer, we had what was called a derecho, which is something very rare in the Midwest. It's kind of a massive tornado of sorts, but it's actually a different phenomenon where it's a land hurricane. So we had a land 3 hurricane come through Iowa at 120 miles an hour and take out several of our smaller towns and cities. The city of Cedar Rapids, which is only 15, 20 minutes from me, lost 60% of all of its canopy and trees just in a matter of a few minutes. And they're still picking up the pieces today. You know, here we are in March, so we're talking about, you know, 8 months ago. So these are all part of different extreme weather phenomenons that are connected to our climate emergency that's really happening today on many different levels.
So Jen, just watching that, I mean, that's some really terrifying information that Jeff is sharing about how climate change is really affecting our planet and our humanity. And our, so I think maybe before we explore that a little bit, this does sound like a great event. So let's just confirm the date and time of the event.
Yep, it'll be next Wednesday, March 10th, 4:30 to 6:30.
Okay. And if someone wanted to see more about the event or sign up for it, how would they do that?
There is a Facebook event where you can find out more information, and if you want to sign up, there's a short link, bit.ly/climate workshop, so bit.ly/climate workshop.
Okay, great. And Jeff will be leading this event virtually on Zoom, and I know we've got a number of students from Wesleyan, a few folks from Middlesex, and students from the Middletown Public Schools, and community members are planning to attend.
Correct. We have a good representation of the Middletown community right now.
So let's talk a little bit about how this interplays with the work that you're doing at Wesleyan and the sustainability plan of the university, and really, you know, listening to the imperative I think Jeff is trying to bring to our attention. How can we work with our students and work with the community to use storytelling and the arts as a device to really talk about what is happening and how it's beyond time to change our culture and how we do things?
Sure. So one thing that I've noticed, and this applies to myself as well, is that we as humans often tell stories as if we are telling a story to ourselves. So I think of facts that convinced me or compelling arguments, and this is compelling to me, and then I tell them to you and think, there's no way you won't agree with me, right? And the answer is often, no, you don't, because you have your own set of values and beliefs and arguments that work for you and your own worldview that all fit in. And so for the students who work in my office especially, I always try to communicate, you know, you have to make sure that you're talking to your audience and not talking to your audience as if it's a bunch of your own face in the audience. That's a really hard thing for, I think, all of us to gather and to grasp, and I know I have a problem with it as well, and that's where storytelling really comes in. I don't know about you, but when I hear a really well-told story, it almost doesn't matter what the story is about. I'm on the edge of my seat listening because I want to know how it ends. And that's what we really need to be doing with climate change, with environmental justice, with all of these big issues, is how do we construct a story, whether with words or through the arts, so that people are maybe not on the edge of their seats. That's maybe an eventual goal to work toward, but so that you can be creating a compelling narrative where I want to listen to you, I want to hear what you have to say, and you've presented things in such a way that I can see myself in them and I can see how my work could fit in with yours. And it's a big ask. You know, this one workshop is not going to suddenly magically make all of us the world's best storytellers, but we're hoping that it will plant the seed that we can then nurture and help people become better storytellers over time.
Sure. It sounds like there's almost two extremes, isn't there? Like, you would find, like, the way you described it initially is we sometimes tend to get in an echo chamber of people who want to think exactly like we do, and it's sort of a self-reinforcing thing, which isn't all that bad. But on the other hand, you have people who may disagree with your point of view or may be uneducated about your point of view, and you're running a fine line between trying to convince them absolutely that your way is the right way. But like you were saying, with a compelling story, I think the general goal is just to get people to think.
Correct. Right? And I think also thinking about who your audience is, in the sense of, I often have people ask me the question, well, what do I do because my family member, neighbor, friend, insert whomever you'd like here, is a climate denier? How do I convince them climate change is real? And my personal view is you don't. That we want to focus on that very small portion of the population that are climate deniers because, we just want to get them to realize this is real, when there are a whole bunch of people in the middle who probably think that climate change is happening, might not really think much about the human impact. Those are the people we can be focusing on. Though that's your audience, not the people who already believe you, not the people who will never believe you, but those people in the middle. And crafting stories in that way and thinking of that as the audience is a really helpful way to think about it, and just kind of ignore the extremes until you get to a certain point.
So this event next week with Jeff Biggers, my understanding is that he will do sort of a basic setup of the event, but then the participants will then go into separate breakout rooms based on the type of storytelling devices that are available to them. And what do those involve?
So he's going to give a lot of background on work that he's done at other schools, and what do we mean by storytelling? And he looks at this through the lens of the narrative arts. So not just me verbally telling you a story, but using poetry, using actual art, using dance, using music, using film, etc. How can you use these as tools to help better tell your story? If any of you have ever attended a PowerPoint presentation where it's just a bunch of words on a screen, you know how using storytelling in the wrong way is very ineffective. Mm-hmm. So people will have an opportunity to explore these different narrative arts with other people and think about, how can we address a sustainability challenge in Middletown? How do we build a more sustainable Middletown using these narrative arts? And then some groups will have a chance to share out if they're willing. And I'm really excited to see what people come up with.
Absolutely, yeah. I think some of our students in this class might be interested, being budding filmmakers and storytellers themselves, right?
Would love to have them.
Yeah. So one of the things that Jeff referred to in his the package that we did was about global inequity and how climate change has affected different populations differently across the globe. And why is that something that we really do need to pay more attention to at this time?
So there are a number of reasons. One is that when surveys and studies have been done, people often think of climate change as happening to someone else in a different time, in a different place, and tend not to think about it happening to themselves. This applies certainly more to people in wealthier countries or wealthier communities, that it's more distant because we can afford to insulate ourselves from those effects. But climate change is happening right now to all of us. Even just the snowstorms we've seen in the past month, from what I've heard, those are more common because of climate change. And so, we need to try to be reframing this as climate change is relevant to all of us right now, and we have a moral obligation to address it because it's what we need to do as a planet. In terms of addressing the global inequity, our work at Wesleyan is somewhat limited in that we can't solve all global problems with a sustainability plan or actions at Wesleyan, but what we can do is try to do things that reduce global carbon emissions, which in turn reduces that impact on disadvantaged communities. We can also, as I mentioned, work more with the Middletown community and think about what sorts of things we can do so that people who live within our own community, who have more barriers and face more inequities, can be assisted in certain ways, and that we can collaborate. We don't want this to be a paternalistic, Wesleyan will solve all of the problems sort of a plan at all. I'm someone who values collaboration perhaps to a fault and really wants to work within the community. I live in Middletown. I love living and working here, and want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're thinking about how the work that we do as Wesleyan impacts the Middletown community and beyond.
Great. So one last time, this is March 10th, Inspiring Climate Action Through Storytelling, a workshop with Jeff Biggers. One more time, the web address for people to find out more?
bit.ly/climate workshop.
Awesome. So I want to thank my guest, Jennifer Kleindienst, who is Director of Sustainability at Wesleyan University, for joining me today. Thank you, Jen.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you, our listeners and our viewers, for joining us for another edition of Middlesex Moments. As always, you're welcome to visit us in person, and please remember to wear a mask if you do. Our main campus is at 100 Training Hill Road in Middletown. You can visit us at our Meriden Center at Platt High School. And, of course, you can always visit us online 24/7 at MxCC.edu. For everybody at Middlesex Community College, I'm Steve Minkler. We'll see you next week.